Hanji, welcome to the Not in the Clouds podcast. I keep forgetting. You know what? Last we tried this before, and I forgot my name, so we had to re-record. And now I've just forgotten everything. So I'm gonna say hello, Ase, Jawan Singh, Sastrikal. How's it going?
Sat Sri Akal. Yeah, really good. From our previous episode, everybody knows that we've met Jetadarji. Jetadarji, well, not just met him, we already knew him. He came to the UK for the first time, so that was really good. He did a divan about love and what love means within Sikhi.
Ase,
It's
I
been
think
busy.
Jawan Singh has just accelerated your workflow by saying that there's going to be another video out before this one.
I was going to say, it depends on whether we get this one out first or whether we get Jeth's one out first. It's
Ooh,
going to
okay,
be
yeah.
But
Basically, me and Jawan Singh just turn up, and Asa does all the work.
Exactly.
it's not true. If you want to volunteer, more than welcome. Taking on apprentices.
But Jallo, I think today's topic is actually quite fitting because Asa does a lot of it. Seva.
That was a segue. You could have chosen any name, and you chose the one person that does none of it.
Stop being humble. Stop. Personally, I think Seva comes from a place where one is not selfish. So it essentially has two sides to it. Either you're selfish or you're not selfish. And how do you take that selfishness out of doing something?
I think it's our nature. Sadhguruji says, "Home rog manuk ko dina," like where it's something that we're dealing with on a daily basis. To be honest, something I think anybody that says otherwise, I think they're lying.
Yeah.
But something
Is
that
that the
everybody
key
struggles
then?
with.
Is that the key then? That the way to be selfish is just to take ego out of the equation.
So this goes back into that thing that we were talking about the other day about Maya and how everything looks so real. You know, when you pick up the plate to give it to somebody else to serve them, are you doing it for them or are you doing it for yourself? What is the play? What is that play? You know, you can do that selflessly completely and just say, look, before anyone else eats, I'm going to serve everyone. And that's the selfless thing to do. And then also, it also shows a form of sacrifice, I feel.
That's good.
There's so many ego traps. I mean, even when you were just talking there, I'm gonna eat after everybody else, so I can serve them first.
Yeah,
it's just it's that language that you have to overcome. The I exists in every form of whatever we do, and Sadhguru Nanak Dev Ji encapsulates it so well in the Asli Word ki ho vich aaya, ho vich gaya, ho vich roya, ho vich hasya, ho vich ditta, ho vich laya. Everything that we do, give, take, cry, laugh, it's all in ego. And I think being selfless and not having an expectation of reward, that's the ultimate. But how do you get to that stage of being able to serve other people? Does it start from doing langar di seva, or does it start at home, serving your parents or serving yourself even?
How do you put yourself first, or instead of being in detriment to anything else? So for example, you're at Costco now, so you're walking to Costco and two people, you've got somebody by your side and they're also walking to pick up the trolley. Now, are you the person who walks slightly faster and picks up the trolley first, or are you that person that lets them go, or are you that person that takes the trolley out, gives it to them, and then you take the next trolley? But what is that play at? What is that at play? What's going on in your mind?
I remember having this epiphany when I was driving. Culturally, in the UK, when you give somebody way, you let them pass because they're quite narrow roads, right? So you do that thing of, or some people do, some people don't, but you give them way. And there was that realization that by allowing that person to go ahead, it's opened up the road for me so that I can drive more freely.
Yeah.
That was a bit of an epiphany. But your example is really nice as well, because what am I going to gain by walking faster and grabbing that trolley ahead of them? Like, it's not a competition that I'm trying to win, is it? Fastest grab trolley.
But what if your mum's made aloo paroteh at home and you need dahi really quickly? I mean, there's always that thing at the back of your head. Where do you come out of yourself for other people? I think that comes out of humility, right? Jonathan, what do you think?
I was trying to think of this Gurbani talk. That's why I've been a little bit quiet. But it goes along the lines of that ego is you can say, the ultimate disease. Right?
Yeah.
But in that Gurbani talk, it says it is also the medicine. And I was contemplating on this, and I was thinking, okay, what is the definition of ego? And is Sadhguruji acknowledging the fact that to actually even want to do good, there's an element of ego there. But Sadhguruji is telling us that that sense of ego is actually a type of ego that is your medicine.
So are you thinking of home mein dirag rog hai, daru pi isma hai?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Home mein dirag rog hai, daru pi isma hai.
I think the next line is poignant as well. So kirpa kare je apani ta gur ka sabad kama. It comes down to, I think Gurbani is very centric to the divine. So it always brings your mind back to the divine and putting that at its core, really. So even Ase and I were thinking the other day, and we were talking about Sa Seva Kiti Safal Hai, Par Jit Satguru Ka Man Man Hai.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think we was talking about it yesterday or the day before about Bhagat Namdev Ji, and he's reached that ultimate goal, right? Where he's making his prashad, and while he's doing that, a dog comes and takes one of the prashad, and by this point, as we traditionally do, he was going to put like butter and kyo on that, refined butter on the prashad to make sure that it's not dry while you're eating it. And he's reached that ultimate goal, and he's in such bliss that he's running after the dog and saying Rabji, Rabji, but that these are things we can't even imagine, right? It's just even a struggle for us to even see, okay, you can get to this place where even the way you see the world changes.
That Gurbani took said of that you mentioned Sa Seva Kiti Safal Hai. What was the last bit?
Jit Satguru Ka Man Man Hai.
And we were talking at the start about how being selfless is recognizing that are you being selfless to yourself and serving everybody because everybody's equal and like the divine exists in everybody. And that last bit of Jit Sadgur Ka Man Manne, have you ever been in that situation where you wanted to donate or wanted to give because you felt compassionate because somebody's on the side of the road and it's cold, and you've gone to give them something and they reject it? You ever been in that situation? You're like, what?
A couple times.
My one most of the time is that if you want, I'll buy you food, but then I can't buy you meat. And that's it. That's where like people get really like offended. Like, what are you talking about?
Okay. They didn't accept it. Your Seva is rejected.
Yeah. And जो होते जो बेइज्जती महसूस होती है ना, that's when you realize that, okay, there's a big element of ego.
But exactly, that's the ego trap. Because then me anyway, I remember spending the ride back like, I was trying to do something good. Like, what? How can you reject that? You're rejecting the seva.
Yeah, it's like you go there as this pious person with this really soft face. You're giving a really nice smile as well.
I was expecting the God bless you.
Like your eyes are half in the clouds, like you're trying to show them,
Is it called the God complex?
Oh, Messiah complex, yeah.
Messiah complex.
It's so true. Oh, but then look, the root of that is I am the doer, right? The root of that 100%. Is I'm giving you something. You know what I mean? This has come out of my earnings. You're not earning anything. You're sitting there begging for things. I'm going to give you something. You have to take it. At that point, is it you doing?
And the crux of Sikh philosophy is tu karta karna main nahi, ja ho kari na hoi. Ultimately,
exactly.
you are, the Almighty is the doer.
But then the first question you're going to have, or the first doubt you're going to have, is that when you read Gurbani, it's always talking about how nothing is in your control. That tu karta karna main nahi, hai na? Tu karta karna main nahi, jahu kari na hui. That people then question, okay, if I don't put the burki in my mouth, then what do I do? Then there's this question. I think this is where especially in our philosophy, where people get confused. There's this circle that we are, which my circle is Jawan Singh, right? And within that, what I define as me, there's this circle that I've created. And even though Gurbani is telling me that that circle that I've created is false, it's realizing that I'm within that circle and what you can control within that circle, where you can reach this outer circle. So there's one circle where you've got me. There's a circle outside of that circle where it says Guru.
Yeah.
And there's a circle outside even that, which is the Almighty, or what we say, the timeless Lord, or the timeless being. And I think here is where people get confused, but it's within that me, your guru tells you things that can start destroying that me, right? And you slowly start destroying that me. And it's like Sadhguru says that when you have like a clay pot, as soon as you get a crack into it, even if it's put upside down, light will start seeping into it.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I wanted to relate it back to Seva, is Sadhguruji has kind of given Seva to us as this medicine to slowly destroy that me.
I've seen real cool examples as well at the Gurdwara, especially recently. So it's almost like people, they graduate through Seva. It's so funny. So, you've got a 6-year-old, they're a 7-year-old, right? And they want to get involved. So they'll give out the spoons. So they'll start with the spoons, chamchaji, and then, they might 6 months later get a little bit stronger. They'll start picking up plates and they'll start giving out plates. And they understand that, when somebody asks them in the hall, get me a plate or get me a cup, they know where it is now. So they graduate. Now they're 7 years old and they'll graduate and they'll be doing, glasses. Then 6 months later, they might be doing pani. But I've seen these kids over the last few years now, and it's been fantastic watching them actually graduate to actually pick up a balti of dal now. So there's 13, 14-year-olds picking up a balti, a bowl of dal. And then you see a kid doing that. So you'll see like a 17, 18-year-old, and you know that you're essentially going to get to that stage at some point. So I think the kid inherently knows that this is a community thing that we do, and they grow with it.
I don't know about you growing up, but generally in the household, that concept of serving each other is slowly disappearing. Like before, it used to be that everybody used to sit down and you would serve each other. We consider Seva the person who's like picking up those plates, but actually the person that sat there to wait for the food to come to them. Even now in this century, even that's like, oh, this is taking too long. Where's the prashad? Where's the dala?
The sense of entitlement.
Yeah, it's that sense of entitlement, right? You was giving the example of people graduating through the Seva.
Yeah.
There's a point where maybe people would graduate beyond that, like where you weren't even meant to go, right?
Even eating is a form of seva, because, like you mentioned last week, that the person who's eating shouldn't have any expectations of what they're being served or how they're being served. And I remember a beautiful moment that we had with Sant Satnam Singh Ji, where it was prashad that had been bought from the Lower Langar from India, and with sabji that they had, they savored every single burki, every single piece of that roti, and recalling how that prashad had been made. So whoever put the flour in, put the water in, they're doing bhakti, they're doing nitnem, knead the dough, they're doing bhajan bandagi, they've got kirtan in the background. And then it went on to Jane Velya, who made the prashada, onto the tawa. And every single step, as they're eating, they're reflecting on each single step of that process and being appreciative of each single step. And being able to serve like that when you're eating and connecting it back to appreciation is really, really powerful.
That should be not just because it's made from the law langar in Pani Sahib, right? That should be, the prashada that's made in your house, the rotis that come out of your house, the everything.
I remember there was a theme at work about mindfulness, and somebody had come externally and they did this exercise. Everything else they said, I don't really remember it. It was a bit fluffy, to be honest, but they gave everybody these box of raisins. Do you remember those box of raisins that we used to get like in primary school and
Sunblest.
secondary
Such a
school?
disappointment.
That's it. Yeah. What was the name? What was the brand?
Sunblest. I remember those.
And they gave everybody these mini boxes, literally about this size, and maybe like maximum, I don't know, about, or let's say 10, 15 raisins they used to be in there, maybe a bit more. And he said, okay, I'm giving you all these raisins as a gift. So obviously, naturally, everybody opens them and has 1, 2, 3, 4, however many they have. He stops everybody and says, what was the taste of the raisins? And really and genuinely, in that moment, I was like, man, I don't even know.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, I've scoffed down like how many of these raisins? I don't even know. Then he tells us, take one raisin, put it in your hand, and he told us, put it in your hand like this, like have it shut in your hand, and think about where that raisins come from. Similar, Baji, what you're talking about, where that raisins come from, how it's been grown, and think about all the individual ridges of that raisin, how, and then inside how it's soft. And go to that minute detail. And he said, then close your eyes and now put it in your mouth. But don't immediately start chewing it. Put it in your mouth and then take a breath, then start eating it. And seriously, I don't know this. I know this sounds crazy, but that raisin tastes amazing.
That taking a moment, like I think Christians and Jews do it, maybe Muslims as well, where they take a moment before they start eating to say grace.
Yeah. I think there's similar something. Yeah, there's something
is that just
similar.
Christians or?
No, it's in us as well. I think by this these rehetname. They in there it says, there's one line, I've forgotten it, but it says, before you eat you should say Twat Prasad.
Sadhguru Nanak Dev Ji says ki khana peena hasana baad jab lag hriday na aave yaad. What's the point of eating, drinking and laughing if you can't cherish and appreciate where that's come from? There's an ardas that's meant to be read after you eat, and the words in that ardas are, I mean, it's from Gurbani, but it really, again, that link back and taking that moment to appreciate what you
go through that quickly, because I don't think a lot of people know that actually. So
Das hai ek naharya sab kach devanhar saas saas simrat reh nanak taras adhar paudi dadda data ek hai sabko devanhar, that there's one giver and he gives to all. Dende tot na aave agnat pare pandar, ki when he gave to me, he gave bountiful, unlimited. Danhar sad jivanhara man murukh kyo tahe bisara. I'm such a foolish person to have forgotten the one person who gave it to me. Dos nahi kahu ko mita maya moh band prabh kita. It's nobody's fault that I've forgotten the Almighty Giver. Oh, my friend, it's the illusion, the entanglement that you've created that's caused me to forget you.
Instead of doing the ardas, what's the concise mool of that? What's the foundation of what you just said?
For me, it's dadda data ek hai sabko devanhar.
I think that concept of how then we relate it to Sarvata Dapala.
So I think Baikanaya is definitely one of them for me, and we've heard that story a few times this week. But the concept of that is Baikanaya saw his guru in everyone. How do we now see our guru in everyone? How do we, when we're serving, when we're walking down the street, everyone to me looks like different people. I can see their hairstyles different. Okay, that person's wearing a chunni, that person's wearing a hijab, this person looks slightly, the skin complexion is darker to me. That's what I see personally when I walk down the road. But how did Baikanaya see Guru Gobind Singh Ji? What does that mean? Is that symbolic?
I remember as a kid, I didn't go to a Sikh school, but I remember hearing from one of my teachers, "Love thy neighbour," and it's a quote from the Bible, and didn't make sense at the time because you're like, I don't even know my neighbour, let alone loving them, right? But don't even talk to them. It's just a gentle nod, like, you're right, you're alive. It's just an acknowledgement. How do you love your neighbour? And then as you doing sangat from Subhas Lakhan Singh Ji and doing sangat from a lot more knowledgeable people, your neighbor is everybody. And the Shabad that I would relate it to is Na ko bari, na hi begana, sagala sang humko banai. Nobody's a stranger, nobody's an enemy. And this connection with other people is because the Dadata Ek hai, because the creator is one. And Paikanayaji saw that on the battlefield, even though there's this drama of two enemies, two armies fighting, it's essentially they're all created and they all eat from the hand of the one.
Put it in another way, maybe a question that somebody may have is then why is Guru Gobind Singh Ji creating a Khalsa army to defeat an enemy?
To challenge that question, I don't think Sadhguru Gobind Singh Ji has any enemies.
The enemy was common. That was tyranny, right? So that was
oppression.
The oppression, yeah.
Yeah.
I think another thing
and why in this concept where we also bring Paikanayaji into it, why is that concept also important, and why is this concept also important?
So the enemy aspect, I think we were talking about ego earlier. There's Gurbani Tokinasadivar, and I think Sarab, you had a hand in translating the English, and it's a beautiful translation. Har karta sab kich janada, sir rog hath dija. And the English translation is, the Creator God knows reality. He places the disease of ego in the path of hypocrites. Now, hypocrisy and ego, I've always thought is a beautiful connection, because being oppressed, any religion doesn't promote being oppressive, doesn't promote tyranny. And people who become hypocrites on that journey are led into ego, that disease of ego that we talked about. So that's what I think they were fighting.
100%. Why do you think as humanity, in some cases where we cling on to these ideas and struggle to let them go, that you have to do it my way, otherwise you're not going to be as successful in your path, whether spiritual or whether worldly? Do you think that is relating back to
my
that?
way or the highway?
Yeah, my way or the highway. And obviously there's extremes of this, right? We're seeing that every day, that there's definitely extremes of this, where you can use your religious scripture, or you can use that this is my book. God gave me this specific book.
One thing we haven't cleared, and I did touch upon Paikanayaji's story, however, we haven't told the story.
Paikanayaji, I would say, is the definition of a Brahmgyani. Brahmgyani is somebody who's destroyed themselves. What's that talk that comes in Shabadazare that talks about destroying yourself? That this is a Gursik that has reached this. And Paikanayaji, they're a person that is carrying this water with them, and they are serving in the war. They're serving the Khalsa Singhs, and they're serving the Mughal army as well. So they're not discriminating. And the Khalsa Singhs at that time, the Singhs at that time, are looking at Paikanayaji, and they're not understanding this. And they're looking at this and thinking, why is Paikanayaji serving the army? They keep getting better and then coming back to fight us again. And they go tell Guru Gobind Singh Ji that this is what Paikanayaji is doing. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji calls Paikanayaji and asks that why the Singhs are telling me that you are serving the Mughal army. Why are you doing this? And Paikanayaji says that I can't see anything else other than you.
We got to realize that Paikanayaji just didn't pop up and start feeding the Mughals. He actually served Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, if I'm not wrong.
This is a really good point, because all of these Sakis that we hear about by Manj, by Kanayaji, by Atar Singh Ji, we always hear the final avastha, the final, their final level, the final form, right? But the way that they achieved that or got to that stage through their life journey, we never really discussed. I'm sure, they would have been so many challenges or obstacles that they would have had to face in life to have that avastha. It's not just, one night you wake up and you're like, right, I'm going to give water to the Muslims, the Mughal army as well.
That's exactly. So when I was younger, I always used to feel that, like the Char Sahibzade just didn't wake up and say, I'm going to oppress everything, or, all these figures that we've got, they have a huge backstory. And I know I've only heard Bhai Kanhaiya Ji's backstory in Katha, and I know they had a very deep connection with Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, where Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji went and told him to stay somewhere and fill pitchers of water. It was almost like,
okay.
they were in training. We can go through it
Yeah.
in another podcast because
Yeah, 100%.
It's the Karate Kid analogy, isn't it? Of doing those.
It's where, and I think the one important thing just to mention about that is that when Guru Gobind Singh Ji hears him saying this, obviously Guru Gobind Singh Ji knows, right?
Yeah.
But Guru Gobind Singh Ji, to show everybody else, is saying that if that is the case, then here, take this Mallam Patti as well, which in English we'll say, take this medicine that also provides the enemy with medicine. And I think that this is where we were talking about tyranny. Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and I think a lot of people know now, this is mentioned quite a lot in Prachar, but for anybody that doesn't know, that at the end of Guru Gobind Singh Ji's arrows, on the metal part of the arrows that would pierce your body, at the end of that, they would coat it with gold. They would be gold-tipped arrows. And the whole purpose of that is that the family who then finds that body, that if for whatever reason they are not, if they're not in that financial position, that at least cut to cut that person at a bare minimum can then perform their last rites. And only somebody that is somebody who you're thinking of as an enemy, you couldn't really do that, could you?
And Sadhguru Gobind Singh Ji narrates this in their own the Bachitra Natak. Aur kisu te bair na geho, dekhan ayo jagat tamasa. I don't harbor enmity towards anybody. I've only come here to watch this illusion, this drama fold.
It's drama, yeah, exactly. And that's what actually I was going to relate it back to the Singhs and then Bhai Kanhaiya Ji, is that Sadhguru Ji on one side has created these staunch warriors who are fighting the enemy. And on the other side, Sajid Prasad Ji has also created the people to go tend to their wounds.
Yeah.
And this is the I think the pinnacle of that drama, right?
100%.
I think in today's society, we feel we're almost driven by others. We're almost driven by, Sardinalde. And Jawan Singh, you gave this example the other day as well. Like if somebody asks you, you get a new car and somebody says to you, well, what does he do for a living? Rather than actually saying, okay, well done, you got a new car. It's really nice. I think we're always competing with everyone else. So they've got that. They've got something. They've got a big house. They've got, whatever it is, worldly items. But we're always competing. How do we keep ourselves focused and centered on ourselves? And I think
Seva is a big distraction, right?
Yeah.
Is that sorry, right? You were going to say that, weren't you?
But you just said Seva is a big distraction.
Seva is a way of distracting yourself from
cool.
that. I think.
I
think you could use Seva as a distraction of trying to compare yourself from other people.
Yeah.
I think I was reading an article. I shared it with you, Juan, that we are not as bored as we used to be. Yeah. And that's it's really bad for our mental health because we're occupying ourselves with TikTok documentaries or social media, Instagram, right?
It made an appearance in this episode too.
It's gonna keep coming.
It's a running theme.
That's something we're running with. That this is going to be a thing.
And we're not becoming bored enough. Not saying that doing Seva is boring, but it's
but open that up a little bit of what we're talking about boredom, not in the sense that you're bored out of your mind where you're thinking that you can't even handle that boredom. I think it's the boredom of repetition. And I think me and Asapaji, when we're in the low langar and you're making these pede, right? I'll be honest with you, it's something that I don't like about myself, but we're there to do Seva. And then on the other side, we're thinking, oh man, when are these pede going to be finished? Like, oh man, how many we created? Like, they should be done by now. Like, they've taken a while. But then afterwards, when you've completed it, at that point, let's say that is our definition of boredom in this scenario. That is like, okay, when is this going to finish? Like, we're experiencing that healthy boredom that article is talking about. But that sense of accomplishment, maybe this is an ego trap, and it probably is, but that sense of happiness afterwards is immense as well. And all of the things afterwards, they're more happy after it's completed rather than during.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's a way where eventually it will be during both, but just to connect it back to that boredom aspect, maybe there is a sense of happy boredom where we don't have to think that the action that we're doing is it's perceived by the world as this great action, like, oh, you're doing this research study and I'm going to get a Nobel Prize. Actually, that mundane, which is perceived as boredom, is what actually keeps the world going, right?
Yeah.
It's this infrastructure that people have set up, where people have set up the electric lines, people have set up these buildings, and these people that are doing the mundane of putting brick after brick after brick. But let's be honest, it's because of them that the civilization is progressing.
I think there's an example of where the Sikh who's trying to learn Gurbani, where they said you put each buttherd on the other side of the river every day, and you see how much that builds up. It's the same way with Gurbani, it's the same way with Seva. You do a little bit, and it's the same thing that we were talking about earlier on. The kid graduates from, the daldi balti to actually then washing the plates afterwards. And then from washing the plates, they'll, hopefully graduate into cooking. Then you learn that skill, and it becomes exponential. It's huge at that point.
So we've spoken about like traditional ways of in Sikh philosophy doing seva, but what, like you said, what are the modern ways of doing seva outside of the traditional norms?
Well, the one that comes to my mind is probably helping someone across the road, right? So they're walking down the street, you can see that they need help, but what if they turn around and say to you, I don't want your help?
Actually, I want to ask, because I've always seen this, and this example is always given. I've never seen in my life or ever had the opportunity to do that. Have you? Okay.
I mean, I have. So when we were moving house, actually, we didn't get help, but somebody was actually putting things into their car, and it was like big sacks of a garden waste. And I think Nina helped him put those garden waste in. I carried on moving my own stuff. I was like, well, I'm going to carry on doing my stuff. She was a bit more selfless than me, and she turned around and went like, okay, I'm going to help put this guy's waste in.
Do you guys know about Blade Runners?
No?
No.
You've not heard about Blade Runners?
Is it about ULEZ or something?
It's ULEZ, yeah.
Okay.
So those guys who go around either sticking
ultimate Seva.
That I thought he was going to do a Jakara there. I thought John Cena.
They're parking in front of ULEZ vans.
Wow.
They're sticking stickers on them. They're chopping them off. It's public service, man.
That leads us on to the next part. So we were talking last day about, how do you implement that in your daily life?
Seva, I feel, practically in day-to-day life, because let's say, okay, we go to the Gurdwara once a week. We get the opportunity once a week. Daily, the people that are with you is your family, right? And for anybody that's married, most of the time it's your partner, it's your wife or your husband.
Yeah.
I think that seva starts there. And I think it's so important, like, to have that mentality of, because once you start thinking that I expect this from my wife or from my husband, that's straight away when you're going to start getting upset.
So true.
But it's the expectation without communication, though, right?
100%. And seva within a marriage is so multifaceted. It's not even just the seva of serving food or the seva of bringing in the groceries, like doing that thing where you put all the groceries on your hands, and like, if I leave one bag, then I'm not a man kind of mentality, right? Where you pick up every single one, and you've got
17 bags.
Yeah, you got 17 bags.
Your hands are bleeding.
Yeah. But no, you can't leave one bag behind. But you see what I mean? Like, there's this mentality. But yeah, that serving mentality, I think, and I think Sahu Pratap Singh ji mentions this in the Upadesh, that if you're going to become Gristi, meaning you're going to live a married life, let seva be the foundation of it.
I think that leads on to a whole podcast. Actually, I think that's
100%.
Yeah.
I was going to say there are so many, especially in Indian culture, there's so many stereotypes, and what I've been struggling with recently is, Juan, doing langar di seva, making prashad in the low langar for a man is completely acceptable, but doing that at home, where you're in your own environment, the expectation is that the girl does it, and if I do it. Well, have you? Maybe, I mean,
yeah.
I think as going to your point, Asapaji, that there's a sense of tradition there as well, which maybe, I don't know, we can't get rid of completely. But I completely agree with your point that there shouldn't be hypocrisy in there either. When I went to India for the first time, I was, maybe 9-10 years old. And obviously here we was always taught by our parents that whenever you go into a room, Like the example my mum used to always give was even a dog wipes their tail before they sit down. And it was the concept that clean your area where you're going to be sitting before you sit down. And I've gone to India, and obviously this is what I'm being taught at home. I go to India, and my grandma did not let me at all clean up. At all. They were offended, like truly offended, that I would even dare to clean up. And they were looking at my parents that how dare you teach a son of our Khandan that they're meant to clean up. I'm like, what's going on? But yeah, no, it definitely starts from home. I'm grateful that we didn't grow up in that, because otherwise we would be more lazy than we are already. But yeah,
I think I've got something similar, but it's Javai service though.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Javai privileges. Javai privileges are massive.
Yeah.
When I go, so my wife's from Kenya, obviously, that you guys know that. And when I go there, honestly, I will put my stuff in one area, like my keys will be here.
Do you take advantage?
Cards. I don't take it. I might do. I do everything here, right? Now I'm joking. But if I put my keys down here, they're there. My watch is there. Everything is in a line. I know where it is. Has its place. And they've got house help there. So Kenya is very similar to India.
Quite common,
where they'll have house help. So the house help will come, and my keys are somewhere else, my wallet's somewhere else, and my watch is somewhere. And she's done a nice job, right? She's done a really good job. The Seva's been done. But I'm turning around saying, my OCD, I put it in this place. I'm getting angry because I want it in the place that I left it. But yeah.
I remember before getting married, reading something about marriage. The expectation is marriage is 50-50. The reality is it's never 50-50. And the way that they spun it was that both of you at some point in your journey will have either good days or bad days. And your role as a couple is to recognize when the other person is having a bad day or needs help on a certain day. And if they're at 30%, they're down in the dumps, then you are the 70% that helps bring them up. And if you're, vice versa.
So I was speaking to a friend the other day, and he gave an example of back 15, 20 years ago where there was a couple, they had 2 kids, and the lady went to work all day, don't know what the job was, and the man would also go to work all day, but she would come home from work, and then she'd cook the roti, she would cook the food, look after the kids, make sure that all the kids' homework's done, make sure that the kids are fed and whatever they need for school tomorrow is all done, whilst the man just literally probably sat on his couch watching TV, picking belly button fluff out of his belly, right? But that it's just the expectation of those old school people. And I think we'll move on to the final segment. Let's be clever. What's your random clever fact for this week? I'll start. Okay, so do you guys play chess?
No.
Not at all. You guys are bad. Both of you are bad strategists, man, honestly.
You can tell who's the most desi out of the 3 of us.
You can tell who's the most British out of all of us as well.
It seems like me and Asir grew up in the Pind in the UK.
I mean, Asir did grow up in Birmingham, right?
It's the Pind.
Right, but are you familiar with the concept of checkmate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of it, yeah.
So the word checkmate comes from a Persian phrase, but the word for checkmate was shahmat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so shahmat, which literally means the king is dead.
Yeah, 100%.
So random fact for you there, but both of you don't play chess.
I learnt this one this week. Do I say that? I don't know.
You can.
You will brush your teeth, right?
Well,
the little like toothpaste, bit of toothpaste that you put on your toothbrush.
Okay.
Right. That has a word. And wait, before I tell you the word, how much toothpaste do you put on your toothbrush?
I don't use toothpaste.
Oh yeah, you're using Lush tablets. No, fair enough. But, so that little piece of toothpaste that you put on your toothbrush, Sarah, it's called a nado.
Oh, what?
A nado?
It's called a nado.
A nado? I thought that was a...
Do you
let's wrap it up. We forgot to wrap it up.
Thanks for listening, guys. We've had a great laugh. All your feedback that we've had so far has been really good as well. But we also want some criticisms as well. So throw them in. This is our shared life experiences with a bit of mix of whatever we've learned in terms of Gurbani and with a bit of humor as well. But it's been great, guys. I really appreciate the time with us, Anjuan Singh. So thank you very much.